It's quarterly Christmas once again, and once again, Tesla has knocked the ball out of the park with a record quarter. I've got all the details and audio from the conference call coming up for you, so let's get to it. This is Tesla Tidbits episode number 650 for the week of April 25th, 2021. As always, we start earnings week shows with the investor slide deck and the numbers that make the quarter. Yet again, Tesla set an all time record both in deliveries and profit. The company officially delivered 184,877 vehicles in the quarter, only 2,030 of which were Model S or Model X. This resulted in a GAAP profit of $438 million, despite challenges with the supply chain, which, unless you've been under a rock lately, you know that everyone is having issues getting computer chips made for many use cases. However, Tesla was able to bypass this somewhat, pushing updates to the cars and using chips from other manufacturers they normally hadn't sourced to continue to produce vehicles and satisfy customers. While the company has struggled to get the new Model S and Model X out the door, that is only better news for Q2, as they expect shipments to hit the road this quarter and could push total production well over 200,000 vehicles for the quarter, in addition to any improvements made to Model 3 or Model Y production. Speaking of Model 3 and its production, the slide deck notes that Model 3 became the best selling premium sedan in the world, bar none, electric or otherwise, defeating both BMW's 3 Series and Mercedes E-Class. Moving on to plant construction updates, Giga Texas continues to progress nicely. Tesla has begun moving equipment into the building already and is even commissioning some of it. They maintain they expect production to begin late this year. Giga Berlin also remains on track and is expected to begin production in the same time frame. More equipment is being moved in there, and it sounds like the two plants may be in a dead heat for the start of production, assuming no regulatory issues. And with that, on to the actual call. As per usual, we open with Elon's starting remarks, and we get status updates on all the vehicle models, the progress of FSD making it to all customers, and insight on Q1 difficulties that Tesla overcame to still produce the best quarter in its history.
Q1 2021 was a record quarter on many levels. Tesla achieved record production, deliveries, and surpassed $1 billion in non-GAAP net income for the first time. And we've seen a real shift in customer perception of electric vehicles, and our demand is the best we've ever seen. So this is, we're used to seeing a reduction in demand in the first quarter, and we saw an increase in demand. That exceeded the normal seasonal reduction in demand in Q1. Model 3 became the best-selling mid-sized premium sedan in the world. In fact, I should say the best-selling luxury sedan of any kind in the world. The BMW 3 Series was for the longest time the best-selling premium sedan. It's been exceeded by the Tesla Model 3. And this is only 3.5 years into production and with just 2 factories. For Model 3 to be outselling its combustion engine competitors, I think is quite remarkable. In the past couple of quarters, we delivered roughly 250,000 Model 3s, which translates to an annualized rate of 500,000 per year. When it comes to Model Y, we think Model Y will be the best-selling car or vehicle of any kind in the world, and probably next year. So I'm not 100% certain next year, but I think it's quite likely. I'd say more likely than not that in 2022, Model Y is the best-selling car or truck of any kind in the world. Then, with regard to full self-driving beta continues to make great progress. This is definitely one of the hardest technical problems that exists, that's maybe ever existed. And really, in order to solve it, we basically need to solve a pretty significant part of artificial intelligence, specifically real-world artificial intelligence. And that sort of AI, the neural nets need to be compressed into a fairly small computer, a very efficient computer that we've designed, but nonetheless, a small computer that's using on the order of 70 or 80 watts. So this is, think a much harder problem than if you were to use, say, 10,000 computers in a server room or something like that. This has got to fit into a smallish brain. And this, I think, with the elimination of radar, we're finally getting rid of one of the last crutches. Radar was really it was making up for some of the shortfalls of vision, but this is not good. You actually just need vision to work, and when vision works, it works better than the best human. It's like having 8 cameras. It's like having eyes in the back of your head, the sides of your head, and 3 eyes at different focal distances looking forward. This is, and processing it at a speed that is superhuman. There's no question in my mind that with a pure vision solution, we can make a car that is dramatically safer than the average person. So, but it is a hard problem because we are actually solving something quite fundamental about artificial intelligence. We basically have to solve real-world vision AI, and we are. So, and key to solving this is also having just a massive data set. So, just having well over 1 million cars on the road that are collecting data from very sort of corner case rare situations. Sort of like so many weird things in the world, like a truck carrying a truck, or a car with a one example is a car, an actual example, a car with a kayak on the roof, where the kayak has a little weight dangling from the front of the kayak in front of the car, and yet the car must ignore this and just look at the road. So it's really quite tricky, but I am highly confident that we will get this done. So yes, this quarter, and I think we'll continue to see that a little bit in Q2 and Q3. So Q1 had some of the most difficult supply chain challenges that we've ever experienced in the life of Tesla. Insane difficulties with supply chain, with parts over the whole range of parts. Obviously, people have heard about the chip shortage. This is a huge problem. But then, in addition to that, for example, we had quite a bit of difficulty scaling drive unit production in China because we were unable to get critical engineers there because of COVID quarantine restrictions. So, which meant that Tesla worldwide was dependent on drive units made at our factory in Nevada, Nevada. So that was a very challenging situation. I think we're mostly out of that particular problem. But those are just 2 of many challenges. So the team is really done an incredible job of dealing with really severe supply chain shortages. So let's see. With respect to the Model S and X, there were more challenges than expected in developing the Plaid Model S, or what's called the Palladium program, which is the new version of Model S and X, which has a revised interior and a new battery pack and new drive units and new internal electronics, and has, for example, a PlayStation 5 level infotainment system. There's just a lot of issues encountered. Ensuring that the new battery was as super safe was quite hard because we're packing more energy in a smaller space. So it took quite a bit of development to ensure that the battery of the new SX is safe. and we're trying to get all the details in the cars slowly for the past few months, but we're just stacking them up in the yard and just making refinements to the cars that we've built. But we do expect to ramp Model S production and start delivering them probably next month. And then to be in sort of fairly high volume production for the S in Q3, and to start delivering the Model X in Q3 as well. So I think as we ramp up, I think probably the demand for the new SX will be quite high. So it's really just going to be a question of ramping supply chain and internal production processes. So probably we're going to aim to produce over 2,000 SX per week. Perhaps if we get lucky, upwards of 2,400 or 2,500. This again is contingent on global supply chain issues, which are just a lot of factors outside of our control here. But I do think these things will get sold, so it's just a matter of time, and then we'll be doing well over 2,000 SX per week. And it's a great car. It actually costs us less to produce, a little bit less to produce, but it is a superior product.
Tesla just keeps killing it quarter after quarter. The question becomes how many record quarters the company strings together before the streak is finally broken. And again, bear in mind that the first quarter every year for the entire industry is traditionally the worst quarter for manufacturers across the board. Yet Tesla just set its all-time record for deliveries and profit. Unfortunately, given supply chain constraints, as Elon kind of alluded to in the call, they might have some issues in the end, regardless of preparation and flexibility. But as we can see, the company is more agile than any other company in the industry, and so you have to like their chances on keeping that streak alive. Elon also gave his update on removing radar from the cars. The logic makes sense, just as not needing LiDAR. We don't use these things as humans, so why shouldn't Tesla be able to write software that can solve these problems without the extra sensors? If it can be done, it certainly reduces the cost of the vehicles, and therefore either the cost buyers pay or increases the profit the company makes. Given what we're seeing just from the existing software for the FSD beta, I trust Elon and company to get it done. On to the actual questions now. First question out of the gate this time was whether or not Tesla can pull an Amazon and turn Dojo into a similar service to Amazon's AWS cloud computing platform. Elon's always funny when it comes to some of the consistent topics we get on these calls. He's always certain to re-explain things we've heard on these calls many times. Not sure if it's just a need to feel thorough on his part, that he's completely forgotten he's explained these same things to us literally dozens of times, or that he thinks the folks asking these questions don't retain knowledge well, and so he explains them again. Regardless, we got another lesson in training AI and labeling before ultimately reaching this answer.
Although, like right now, people think of Tesla as, a lot of people think Tesla is a car company or perhaps an energy company. I think long-term people will think of Tesla as much as an AI robotics company as we are a car company or an energy company. I think we are developing one of the strongest hardware and software AI teams in the world. Certainly, we appear to be able to do things with full self-driving that others cannot. So, and if you look at the evolution of what technologies we developed them in order to solve the problem of self-driving. So we couldn't find a powerful enough neural net inference computer, so we designed and built our own. The software out there was really quite primitive for this task, and so we built a team from scratch, and have been developing what we think is probably the most advanced real-world AI in the world. And then it sort of makes sense that this is kind of what needs to happen, because the road system is designed for a neural net computer, our brain. Our brain is a neural net computer. And it's designed, the entire road system is designed for vision with a neural net computer, because it's designed for eyes in a brain. And so if you have a system which has very good eyes, you can see in all directions at once. You can see 3 focal points ahead, forward, but it never gets tired. It's never sort of texting. It has redundancy, and its reaction time is superhuman. Then it seems pretty obvious that such a system would achieve an extremely high level of safety, far in excess of the average person. So that's what we're doing. Then Dojo is kind of the training part of that. So because we have over 1 million cars, and perhaps next year we'll have 2 million cars in active use, providing vast amounts of video training data that then needs to be digested by a very powerful training system. And currently, we use it's Tesla training software. So we developed a lot of training software, a lot of labeling software to be able to do surround video labeling, which is quite tricky. This means all 8 cameras simultaneously at 36 frames a second per camera, labeling video over time. There wasn't any tool that existed for this, so we developed our own labeling tool. Then taking it a step further, obviously the holy grail is auto labeling. So now we're getting quite good at auto labeling, where the trainers train the training system, and then the system auto labels the data, and then the human labelers just need to look at the labeling to confirm that it is correct and perhaps make edits. And then every time an edit is made, that further trains the system. So it's kind of like a flywheel that's just sort of spinning up. And really, the only way to do this is with vast amounts of video data. So then we need to train this efficiently. So Dojo is really it is a supercomputer optimized for neural net training. We think Dojo will be probably an order of magnitude more efficient on say, I'm not sure what the exact right metric is, but say per frame of video. We think it'll be an order of magnitude more cost efficient in hardware and in energy usage per frame of video compared to a GPU-based solution, or compared to the next best solution that we're aware of. So then possibly that could be used by others. It does seem as though over time, I mean, just an observation, I think basically just a fact that neural net-based computing, or AI-based computing, is more and more of the compute stack. Conventional computing, perhaps heuristics based computing, is still going to be important, still going to be very important, but it will become, but neural net will become a bigger and bigger portion of compute. So anyway, that was a long story, but I think, probably others will want to use it too, and we'll make it available.
So, a really long and roundabout way of saying yes, Tesla may very well squeeze some money out of the AI training system it's built. Now, much like the supercharging network, it remains to be seen who, if anyone, takes Tesla up on the offer. Next up, recently both Solar Roof and Powerwall got modifications to pricing and conditions for purchase. Our next question asked what the reasoning was and what's next for these products.
Yeah, first of all, I should say that the demand for the Solar Roof remains strong. So despite raising the price, the demand is still significantly in excess of our ability to meet the demand to install the solar roofs. So production is going fine, but we are choked at the installation point. We did find that we basically made some significant mistakes in assessing the difficulty of certain roofs, but the complexity of roofs varies dramatically. Some roofs are to be literally 2 or 3 times easier than other roofs. So you just can't have a one-size-fits-all situation. If a roof has a lot of protuberances, or if the roof the core structure of the roof is rotted out or is not strong enough to hold the solar roof, then the costs can be double, sometimes 3 times what our initial quotes were. So in those cases, what we've obviously offered to do is to refund customers their deposit, but what we cannot do is go and just lose a massive amount of money. We just got to provide a refund of the deposit. But that's what is I think most important about the solar roof situation, which I tweeted about this past week, is that we're shifting the whole sort of solar situation, so the solar Powerwall, basically solar plus battery situation, to there's only one product, basically, or there's only one configuration. Every house, we will not sell a house solar without a Powerwall. That solar could either be solar retrofit, with conventional panels put on a roof, or it can be the Tesla solar glass roof. But in all cases, it will have the Powerwall 2. Technically, it's actually Powerwall 2 Plus, if you will. The Plus refers to a higher peak power capability. So basically, all Powerwalls made since roughly November of last year have a lot more peak power capability than the specification on the website. They have about twice the power capability, roughly. It depends on how you count power, but about twice the peak power, and about arguably twice the steady state power of the specification of the website. The energy is the same, but the power is roughly double. And all installations will have the Powerwall, and the difficulty of the installation will dramatically increase, or the difficulty of the installation will be much less. It'll be much easier because the power from the solar glass roof, or the solar panels will only ever go directly into the Powerwall, and the Powerwall will only ever go between the utility mains, between the utility and the main power panel of the house, which means you never need to touch the main circuit breakers of the house. You never need to touch the house circuit breakers. Effectively, almost every house therefore looks the same electrically, instead of being a unique work of art and requiring exceptional ability to rewire the main panel. So this is extremely important for scalability. It's the only way to do it, really. And this also means that every solar Powerwall installation, that the house or apartment, whatever the case may be, will be its own utility. And so even if all the lights go out in the neighborhood, you will still have power. So that gives people energy security. And we can also, in working with the utilities, use the Powerwalls to stabilize the overall grid. So let's say that there's like there was in Texas, there was a peak power demand, and that peak power demand, because the grid lacked the ability to buffer the power, they had to shut down power. There's no power storage, no good form of power storage. However, with a whole bunch of Powerwalls at houses, we can actually buffer the power. So if the grid needs more power, we can actually then, with the consent, obviously, of the homeowner and in partnership with the utility, we can then actually release power onto the grid to take care of peak power demands. So effectively, the Powerwalls can operate as a giant distributed utility. This is profound. I'm not sure how many people will actually understand this, but this is extremely profound and necessary, because we are headed towards a world where, as we were just talking about earlier, where people are moving towards electric vehicles. This will mean that the power needs at homes and businesses will increase significantly. There will need to be a bunch more electricity coming somewhere. In fact, if you go to full renewable electricity, we need about 3 times as much electricity as we currently have. These are rough numbers, but you roughly need twice as much electricity if all transport goes electric, and then you need 3 times as much electricity if all heating goes electric. So basically, this is a prosperous future, I think, both for Tesla and for the utilities. Because, and in fact, I think this will be very, if this is not done, the utilities will fail to serve their customers. They won't be able to do it. They won't be able to react fast enough. And we're going to see more and more of what we see in California and Texas of people seeing brownouts and blackouts and the utilities not being able to respond because there's a massive change going on with the transition to electric transport, and we're seeing more extreme weather events. This is a recipe for disaster. So it is very important to have solar and batteries at the local level at the house. In addition, it is important to have large battery storage at the utility level, so that solar and wind, which are the main forms of renewable electricity, that electricity can be stored, because sometimes the wind doesn't blow, sometimes it blows a lot, sometimes it blows too much, and sometimes it doesn't blow enough. But if you have a battery, you can store the energy and provide the energy to the grid as needed. The same goes for solar, because obviously the sun does not shine at night, and sometimes it is very cloudy. And so by having battery storage paired with solar and wind, this is the long-term solution to a sustainable energy future. And as I said, this really needs to occur both at the local level and at the utility level. If it doesn't occur at the local level, what will actually be required is a massive increase in power lines, in power plants. So they have to put long distance and local power lines all over the place. They'll have to increase the size of the substations. It's a nightmare. This must occur. There must be solar plus battery. It's the only way.
So Elon definitely got into the weeds a little bit there with his vision of the future for solar plus storage. Unfortunately, Solar Roof has certainly had a tough road to actual production. While there are certainly installations running out there, Tesla is not getting nearly as many installed, and the complexity of some roof installations seems to be the reason. I'm certain they'll overcome this and get moving forward again, though. As to the Powerwall needing to be paired with solar no matter what, Tesla is so inundated with requests for Powerwall that it had to find a way to reduce demand without harming customers by raising prices. And this was, in my opinion, the very cool and innovative approach they chose. Powerwall is best paired with solar anyhow, and while you absolutely could use one in place of a generator without it, why not take some solar to charge it rather than relying on grid power? The fourth interesting topic of the earnings call was the topic of the massive load of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that has found its way into the mainstream media as of late. Whether this is the recent Texas crash, China news, Berlin news, take your pick, the FUD factory has kicked into high gear as of late. Elon took this opportunity to torch these so-called journalists that do not deal in facts and got an assist describing the Texas incident in particular.
There was an article regarding a tragedy where there was a high-speed accident in Tesla that, and there was really just extremely deceptive media practices where it was claimed to be autopilot, where this is completely false. And those journalists should be ashamed of themselves. Please go ahead, Lars.
Yeah, thanks, Elon. So I was just saying we're committed to safety in all our designs, and that's number one in what we do here. Regarding the crash in Houston specifically, we worked directly with the local authorities, NTSB and NHTSA, wherever applicable, and whenever they reach out to us for help, directly on the engineering level and whatever else we can support. In that vein, we did a study with them over the past week to understand what happened in that particular crash, and what we've learned from that effort was that autosteer did not and could not engage on the road condition that as it was designed. Our adaptive cruise control only engaged when a driver was buckled and above 5 miles per hour, and it only accelerated to 30 miles per hour over the distance before the car crashed. As well, adaptive cruise control disengaged the car slowly to complete to a stop when the driver's seatbelt was unbuckled. Through further investigation of the vehicle and accident remains, we inspected the car with NTSB and NHTSA and the local police, and were able to find that the steering wheel was indeed deformed, so leading to the likelihood that someone was in the driver's seat at the time of the crash, and all seatbelts post-crash were found to be unbuckled. We were unable to recover the data from the SD card at the time of impact, but the local authorities are working on doing that, and we await their report. As I said, we continue to hold safety in a high regard and look to improve our products in the future through this kind of data and other information from the field.
Illuminating information for that Texas incident. I'm not entirely sure I'm on board with the steering wheel deformation proving a driver, given the car was on fire at one point. I think it's possible that the wheel could have been deformed by the heat of the fire. However, we have no good data on exactly how long the fire burned, other than it was out in minutes once firefighters reached the scene. As Lars mentioned in the call, we'll have to wait for NHTSA and NTSB's findings for further info. We now kick into the analyst question portion, and amazingly, we get a good question to kick off this portion of the call, asking how 4680 process is coming.
We have a small sort of pilot plant, which is still big by normal standards, expected to have like a 10 gigawatt hour per year capability in Fremont, California. We've made quite a few cells. We're not quite yet at the point where we think the cells are reliable enough to be shipped in cars, but we're getting close to that point. And then we've already ordered most of the equipment for battery production in Berlin, and then much of it for Austin as well. So we're really down to like the nitty-gritty elements. But overall, I think we still feel quite optimistic about this achieving volume production of the 4680 next year.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Yeah, thanks. Just one thing I would add is there's been a lot of questions about yield. Actually, I noticed people asking about that, and the yield progress has been really strong every day. When we were really still in commissioning phase with most of the tools, to the point where we're confident that the yield trajectory aligns with our internal cost projections. We did talk about yield also at Battery Day, which is one of the reasons why it's useful to check in on that. It takes a while, as Elon just mentioned, to go from prototype to production, and it's not just parts, it's processes, it's equipment. But as we've matured those pieces of the process equipment, we've gotten to where we need to be on the yield side.
Yeah, and basically, this is just a guess because we don't know for sure, but it appears as though we're about 12, probably not more than 18 months away from volume production of the 4680. Now, at the same time, we are actually trying to have our cell supply partners ramp up their supply as much as possible. So this is not something that is to the exclusion of suppliers. It is in conjunction with suppliers. So yeah, we want to be super clear about that. This is not about replacing suppliers. It is about supplementing the suppliers. So we have a very strong partnership with CATL, with Panasonic, and LG. And our request to our strategic partners for cell supply is please please supply us with as much as you possibly can. Provided the price is affordable, we will buy everything that they can make.
Yeah, and specific to that, we're on track to more than double the supplier capacity over the next 13.
So that was another one of those kind of twofold answers we get from time to time. Tesla's suppliers should definitely not be nervous, as Tesla is not going to stop purchasing cells from them anytime soon. And it's great news to hear that it seems that they're very near feeling confident enough in the safety of the cells to install in vehicles, though just not yet. It would seem as well that the yields they're looking for are getting there too. Elon stated a 12 to 18 month volume production start, though as always, take that with a huge grain of salt. I've now taken to not reporting stories related to feature timeframes since they are late so very often. Finally, for this call, Zach gives us an interesting update on full self-driving and the subscription model.
Yeah, we're working on getting FSD subscription out. There's a couple of internal technical dependencies, but from a business model perspective, that's aligned, and we're hoping to roll that out soon. The key thing that I say here, there's a lot of potential for recurring revenue based on an FSD subscription. If you look at the size of our fleet and you look at the number of customers who did not purchase FSD up front or on a lease and maybe want to experiment with FSD, this is a great option for them. One of the things we'll need to keep an eye on is a potential transition from cash purchases of FSD subscription over to, or cash purchases of FSD who may move over to FSD subscription. And so there could be a period of time in which cash reduces in the near term, and then as the portfolio of subscription customers builds up, then that becomes a pretty strong business for us over time. But we're hoping to get this launched pretty soon and see what the response is to it.
It's clear that the company expects the FSD subscription to be a huge benefit in the future. This may honestly be something that may be super underappreciated by many investors. If you stop and think, the number of FSD purchases that have already been made without the capstone feature being in place is not an insignificant number. You have to think that the take rate for both purchase as well as subscription will be stratospheric once the full self-driving feature is finally complete and available to everybody. The cars will literally print Tesla money each month from the owners that opt for the subscription. Tesla has no other revenue model like this, and it will be a huge cash flow that is literally pure profit. And since I referenced stock, here is my disclaimer that I am a Tesla shareholder and actively look for opportunities to purchase stock at any time. This should not be taken as financial advice and is merely my opinion. And that will do it for this week's show. Thanks to all my patrons supporting the show at patreon.com/Tesla Tidbits. And as always, a special shout out goes out to all the super patrons supporting the show at the $10 plus level. They're Ryan Scarborough, Lee Sweet, William Henry Crew III, Dorian Steve Guberman, Ralph and Cheryl Waterhouse, Todd Sullivan, Zortek LED Canada, Raymond Adebo Malkowitz, Vicky Kirk, Ricky Johnston, Nathan Garza, Ed Patterman, Sunil Joseph, and Brad Lettner. If you have feedback for me, the best way to be heard is to tweet at Tesla Tidbits and use the hashtag AskTeslaTidbits if you'd like your question to be considered for the show. Until next week, keep it charged and hit the road.